one of the people online who believed for a single second that it was even a remote possibility that I simply made up a French assassination attempt.
I won't do a long video. If you want to know, go watch a bunch of videos I have on Candace Owens, youtube.com/@Serf Times. Long story short, Candace Owens has for some time believed that Charlie Kirk was not assassinated by the person who is currently in custody for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. She believes that he may not have been the gunman, may have not been a single gunman, could be a part of several gunmen, but was not working alone, was not a, son of a Mormon conservative right-wing MAGA family that was very pro-gun, which is what a lot of the current information known about him is pointing towards. And while the right has tried many times to try and smear the story, saying that he in fact was a trans person, that turned out not to be true, but then he had trans bullets because he wrote the bullets casings with some coded language that they didn't truly understand. They found out later that was from video games, so that angle wasn't true, but it turns out he may have had a trans roommate who may have indoctrinated him into trans ideology. We're not entirely sure, but then we're not entirely sure if the roommate was the lover, because apparently he may have actually had a romantic relationship with the trans roommate, but that is also not confirmed either. And then in private discords, he also admitted to having shot Charlie Kirk, and those private discords seem to be way more about friendship, memes, video games, the Gen Z youth posting, irony posting, stuff like that. None of it was political, so it doesn't look like he was as politically motivated as they'd like to say. But then, of course, Kash Patel, being the superstar that he is, has already presented a number of what seem to be falsified stories, including the day of the shooting, that he in fact had the shooter in custody when he didn't have the shooter in custody, which isn't great because it leads to people like Candace Owens being able to spin her own narrative. And Candace Owens has from day one never believed the official story. She has basically been the leader of the Charlie Kirk truther movement. She has been the central and key figure propagating the majority of conspiracies involving Charlie Kirk's assassination, and her initial assessment that it had to do with the fact that Charlie Kirk was in fact starting to lower the temperature on his loyalties to Israel. For anyone who doesn't know, Charlie Kirk was a Zionist. Charlie Kirk was a very strong supporter of Israel. Charlie Kirk was a very strong supporter of the U.S. relationship with Israel. He was also a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu. However, in private conversations that he had been having and messages both to Candace Owens and to other individuals, it sounded like less and less like he was actually really, really keen on supporting Israel into the future. And because of that, she proposed that there may have been a plot to take him out specifically because his loyalty was not ironclad, which that alone was ridiculous. But you know what? It's vague enough that the internet probably had a really, really awesome time dealing with it and running with it, and there's a large percentage now of right-wingers who are part of the Charlie Kirk truther movement. Ian Carroll is one of them. There are other prominent figures, of course, who are basically buying into Candace Owens' narrative about Charlie Kirk and his assassination. This evolved recently because Candace Owens is also undergoing a very expensive lawsuit from the French government, specifically from Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron, who are suing her for defamation, specifically because she says that Brigitte Macron has a penis. That is simply just not true. Now, Brigitte Macron is not a good person. She is a groomer, and she has groomed Emmanuel Macron, and there was a lot of things that you could have said about her history of being very predatory and creepy and pedophilic towards, the current Prime Minister of France, and the way that, she treated him. And that would have been something that you could do if you wanted to talk about them and disparage them. But instead, because she's got so much transphobic brain rot going up inside the brain, she decided to say that Brigitte Macron has a penis. And she kept saying it and saying it over, and she released documentaries, and she was just talking about how there's no evidence of her having grown up as a woman. There's no child photos, so that has to mean that she has a penis. She has a brother who looks similar to her. It's weird how relations can be kind of similar looking sometimes, people who are siblings or related, but either way, that she believes was actually pictures of Brigitte when she was a he and a child, and that's why it's been a big cover-up, and everyone is finding out about this. This was basically a very weird conspiracy theory that was in the fringes of the French podcast circuits, but that was it. The rest of the world didn't really talk about this because it's just so ridiculous, because ultimately most people understand that Brigitte Macron has 3 kids. So for the transphobic crowd to be pushing this, you either have to believe that trans men can give birth, which they can, but that's not what this is about. This is about the fact that she denies that Brigitte Macron has in fact had children. The whole thing is part of the cover-up. There's got to be a third party who gave birth to those kids, maybe a surrogate. We're not sure. We don't know how deep it goes. And as the lawsuit has gone on, it's probably looked very bad for Candace. She has had the ability to get the entire lawsuit thrown out, rejected, and that was a big loss for her, so it has to go through. And the evidence has been presented towards, the court that, in fact, Brigitte Macron has had 3 kids. She has pregnancy photos. That's apparently what's been submitted. She has documented evidence of being pregnant. She has children. You can verify that they are her kids through a DNA test. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence for her to be able to demonstrate conclusively that she's a cis woman. So personally for me, I mean, I'm not a lawyer or a gambling man, but I definitely would have told you not to bet on Candace when it came to this particular lawsuit, even though I know it's really, really hard. The burden of proof is very high in the United States, especially when it comes to this kind of stuff. But this one is kind of just, there's not really a winnable trajectory here for Candace. But she may have found one, because last week she started saying that she has uncovered an assassination plot by French legionnaires under the instructions of the French government, who were collaborating with Canada and Israel in order to assassinate Charlie Kirk and herself. And that was what she put out there into the ether. And that's a pretty wild claim. And she then came forward to say, I have submitted all of this to the United States government at the highest levels. I have submitted this to Donald Trump. That they have it. And, the proof of this entire thing being real is going to be revealed at the fact that there is now going to be an investigation into this entire assassination, etc. And then she said she wasn't going to stream that week because, she had to deal with the assassination attempts. And it's got to be really scary if you have, again, both the French government, the Canadian government, and the Israeli government all collaborating to assassinate you in collaboration with, again, French legionnaires. I don't know who exactly she's implying was hiring them, but the whole thing seemed to be very scary, and it was getting worse, and it's getting real. And yesterday she came back finally to the internet to do her special, where she was going to reveal to the world the receipts that she had that this entire thing was true. So she did that yesterday. I was going to play you a quick clip from it.
Foremost, if you were one of the people online who believed for a single second that it was even a remote possibility that I simply made up a French assassination attempt, heading into Thanksgiving week, I don't know, for like attention or something, a claim which has gone.
No, I don't think you're doing it all for attention. It's hard to tell sometimes, right? Because there is obviously a certain degree of grifting that goes on the right-wing pundit circuit. But then there are some people who kind of get so deep into their own conspiracies that they themselves convince themselves of them to be true. Then you start getting, the types where it's like, this person might be a bit of a true believer. Now, I don't know if I put Candace necessarily into that category. I think there are things that she talks about that she willingly lies about and distorts and is fully aware that they're lies. I think there's other situations where you start to get to a point where you become so powerful. Like, she is one of the largest right-wing commentators on the entire internet now. We're talking 160, 170,000 live viewers when she, does one of her shows and stuff like that. So she is her own TV network. She's a titan. And at that point, she starts to see the world in very different terms, especially if she's now putting out there that she believes that the Trump administration may have collaborated with the governments of France and potentially Israel and Canada to orchestrate an assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, whether or not the United States itself was going to permit that assassination to take place, or whether or not they were simply aware of it but then didn't act upon it, which also could be part of the conspiracy, right? You don't need to fill in the gaps, all that kind of stuff. But in either situation, they are such outrageous claims, and they are being done on such a level and a stage that it genuinely would be frightening for anyone to engage in this if you didn't on some level know that some part of it had to be true, because otherwise, my word, that is a degree of flailing that I will never have the courage to do. There is a very, very kind of low tolerance that I have for things just getting out of control, you know, and they've happened in a much smaller microcosm version of reality, you know, like maybe you told like a little fib at school and then a couple kids believed it and then they told a bunch of other kids and all of a sudden it's like, hey, is it true that your dad works for Nintendo? Is that real? And it's like, well, okay, he doesn't work for the company, but he's an electrician and he got to do like the wiring for the lighting in the Nintendo factory that got set up in Richmond, and so that's pretty cool, right? That's not the same thing. You said your dad worked for Nintendo. You lied to us. It was like, no, and so that's pretty much my limit. That this is a true story that happened, by the way. My dad was an electrician by trade, and he did get to do the lighting in a Nintendo factory. And then for me being really excited because I loved Nintendo, I did tell people that my dad was working at the Nintendo factory that day, but I didn't specifically say he worked for Nintendo. So those two are very different things. But then all of a sudden the kids ran and they started spreading rumors, and then kids were coming back to me and they're like, your dad works for Nintendo, and then it turned out that was not true. And so things it had gotten carried away, and I realized at that moment that this had just blown up into something that I could not contain or control. So I had to actually take a step back and be like, okay, let's just start taking it off ramp, right? Like we have to kind of cut our losses at a certain point and realize like this is just going to get out of control and get worse before it gets better. And I don't know if Candace is willing to ever do that because now things have gotten to a point where like this has got to be like on a certain level very risky. There are going to be Candace Owens true believers as there are Alex Jones true believers in perpetuity. It does not matter what she says, just like it doesn't matter what Alex Jones says. He can be incorrect 90% to even to 99.9% of the time. Watch Knowledge Fights if you want to see how often Alex Jones is wrong in a given day. And because he gets maybe, less than 1% of what he talks about accurate, and he will then propagate those few moments in compilation clips online, and then everyone is like, oh, Alex Jones is right. Okay, so it's not a conspiracy. Okay, interesting.
Viral. When I say viral, I mean just the tweet alone had over 100,000 retweets and 45 million impressions on X alone. This was front page global news from the United States to Russia. It's now been a full week since I made that announcement. And here is the official response issued by the Elysee Palace. Nothing. And I publicly challenged the Candace is making everything up crowd.
Our show will be off the air this week. As an update, both the White House and our counterterrorism agencies have confirmed receipt of what I reported publicly. Emmanuel Macron attempted to organize my assassination, per a source close to the first couple. Also, I will again state that the French legionnaires were involved in Charlie Kirk's assassination, but they did not act alone. For all of you who doubted my claims, you can now look to the President of the United States and our intelligence communities to issue a statement to confirm whether I am telling the truth. You set the terms and conditions up here, just to be completely clear, right? And even then, the burden of proof is on you, the one making the claims. Just again, so we're completely clear, right? But even then, you're like, you know what? I'm going to basically set up parameters that can be proven true or false. That we have now conditions in which I could actually be called out as a liar, because the United States and the intelligence agencies will confirm what I'm saying is true, and that's how you know that I'm actually telling you the truth. That's Candace Owens' terms, no one else's, just so we're clear.
To prove it, press the White House for a response, right? The White House the ball's very firmly in their court, and a week later, this is the official White House response.
Right. Which is exactly what I would have expected if the whole thing was made up. Because you got to understand, they don't have to respond to anybody. And the wonderful thing about the job that both of us have, right? I know that she's infinitely more famous than I am. Congratulations, Candace, on all your success. But the job that we both have, I could say anything I want right now into this microphone, and there's a percentage of people who are watching live who might be able to take that and run with it. It doesn't matter what I say, even if it's completely false. And it doesn't mean that the governments of various countries need to respond to it, right? Like if I was like, hey, everybody, I have indisputable evidence that Mark Carney actually ingests Furbies in order to receive sexual pleasure and stimulation from them vibrating inside of his body. Now, A lot of you are going to say that that's an outrageous and lofty claim, and one that requires extraordinary evidence, because again, it is just an extraordinary claim. And I agree with you, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But I'm going to ask you this. Now that I've said this out loud, we will then see if they respond. We will see if there's an official statement that comes out of the government of Canada. If we see from the Prime Minister's office, he's going to make a statement on whether or not he does in fact ingest Furbies to receive sexual pleasure from them. And if they don't respond, what does that tell you? That, what are they hiding? What? I know it seemed preposterous before, but now, aren't you a little more curious? Aren't you at all a little bit like, oh, God damn, that is true? Because if it wasn't true, they would just outright say it. They would just come up with a statement, an effective statement. All they need to write is like this statement made by Lance of the Serfs from the very popular and incredible live TV program on the Twitch streaming platform. The Serfs, in fact, was false. And we have no evidence and don't need to provide any evidence of this. You realize why this entire thing is absurd, right? And by the way, she didn't even go that far. She originally said, you will know that I'm telling the truth because of the fact that my actual receipts are going to be replicated by the authorities in the United States. Now, when she does her live show, she's trying to be like, hey, by the way, they didn't respond. That's right, but that was the terms and conditions, right? Do we go? Let's go back here. For all of you who doubted my claims, you can now look to the President of the United States and our intelligence communities to issue a statement to confirm whether I am telling the truth. And they did not. And now you're trying to say, well, the fact that they didn't, that's pretty telling.
So what's the issue here? Why is no one coming out and telling you that that's completely baseless? I cannot present to you a fact, and you can't present to me not a fact. Okay, so we're both.
Well, it's very, very hard to disprove a negative. I'm sure everyone knows that, right? That's one of the reasons why it's considered a, let's just say, underhanded tactic to start with a statement to somebody. Can you prove that you do not, in fact, beat your wife? And then if someone hears that, it's like, what? Yeah, can you prove that you do not, in fact, beat your wife? And then all of a sudden it's like, why do I have to prove that? Why do I have to now provide evidence or be even defensive about something that you just made up? You made up something. That is a thing that came out of your mouth that has no bearing on reality. Why don't you prove it? Why aren't you going to present evidence? In the case of this story with Candace Owens, where she has said that the Canadian government, the French legionnaires, the French government, potentially even the Israeli government, and the U.S. administration may have looked the other way. We're not entirely sure, but they have orchestrated my assassination. This is 100% true. I have the facts. And for everyone who's doubting me and saying that this is made up, the truth will come out in the form of a revelation from the government of the United States. Maybe the president will say something.
Okay. This would be your unique opportunity as the French first man to prove your case about Candace to the public, right? In the court of public opinion. This would be your time to slam dunk. Remember, the French couple has been so psychotically obsessed with trying to paint me as conflicted in my reporting that they even hired a private investigator to try to see if I was colluding with other state actors. You know, they kind of gloriously insinuated that I might be working with Russia. They paid for that. They paid for that investigation. So using that logic, wouldn't this be the opportunity, if you're the French couple, to come out and to prove your point?
I don't know if she is, but I will say this. I don't think the long term this is going to work. I think that she's still going to have to pay a lot of money. I still think that she's most likely, based on the way that she's acting now, very Alex Jones, right tier. She's probably going to just agree to a settlement of some amount and not have to admit to the amount that is actually being paid out and also wrongdoing. Maybe something to that effect, or maybe even a simple apology, right? She might have to take her videos down. Becoming Brigitte will be, taken off YouTube or demonetized or whatever that is. And she'll make some very, very lawyer written statement that basically admits to as little fault as possible, while at the same time reaching the legal barrier that she has to cross to be able to appease, the Macrons in this case. But in terms of like continuing to go down this rabbit hole of Charlie Kirk was assassinated by the French government in conjunction with the Canadian and the Israeli governments, and in part they want to assassinate me as well. I guess that's always just going to be something for her hardcore fans to believe and never really think critically about it. Because, like, there's still people to this day that believe that, you know, Alex Jones was right, that Sandy Hook was a false flag, and that, you know, the kids never died, or at least there was something that we weren't being told, and maybe there were some kids who were crisis actors, and there were some parents who were crisis actors, and some people were hired. We're not entirely sure. We don't know the whole story. To this day, there's still people who believe that, and they always will. And like, there's still QAnoners. Even though Q and all of his predictions didn't come true, at the core of the Q conspiracy was the fact that Donald Trump was supposed to stay in power. He did not. Now, I know you can start morphing and mutating the entire conspiracy into, well, actually, Joe Biden was Donald Trump in a skin suit, and that's how Donald Trump remained in power, so he could still get the Q drops. And it's like you're talking to a bus stop because your family left you, right? Like, your kids left you, your wife left you. People lost their entire families believing this shit. I'm sure there's going to be a percentage of people who are going to believe Candace Owens in perpetuity and be ardent supporters of the Charlie Kirk truther conspiracies. I still think this is useful to the left in regards to she's making them all fight each other even more. Like, it's Candace Owens versus Turning Point USA, and she has gone after all but Erica Kirk in name. She hasn't gone as far as saying, I think Erica Kirk was part of the conspiracy to assassinate Charlie Kirk, because she can't cross that line yet. There is no coming back from that forever, right? Like, once she does that, you have officially launched the full-scale right-wing civil war, which is why I want her to do it. But up until then, we just gotta wait. So right now she's more playing fast and loose with, like, her own enemies, which happen to, yes, be the Macrons, who are suing her for a very large amount of money and most likely going to win. She's trying, like, not only is it like Alex Jones and the conspiracy things, she's also releasing so much information in these live shows, which I'm sure are probably gonna hurt her case in the long run.
To make a stunning and a swift statement, right? We are shocked by the accusation. Of course, never in a million years. Oh, we told you guys, this is just for clicks, it's for money. This is beyond anything we've ever heard. I hope Candace gets well soon. That would be what I would say you should do if I'm advising you from a PR standpoint, right? In American basketball terms, this is like a flagrant foul, and you now get some free throws, right? If you're the French couple. You're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, investigative fees, and PR fees in a country on the other side of the Atlantic, trying desperately to paint me as a lunatic, and I give you the opportunity to spike the ball to prove that I'm a lunatic, and you don't do it? No,
they are doing it in court. That's the whole point of the lawsuit. Because I think you could have gotten away with this for a while had you not just kept pressing it. And it gets to be a point where it's just like, you're damaging someone's reputation on the international stage. You're getting enough people to believe you. And there's now a significant percentage of the population where you can actually start to demonstrate material damages. At that point, the lawyer's like, yeah, you guys have a very clear-cut case here. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence that Brigitte Macron is a cis woman. Particularly the fact that she's had 3 children really hurts Candace Owens' case.
They didn't do it, did they? If you're paying attention, they did not do it. Of course, they send out the people on Twitter who get to come out and say, oh, I think she's crazy. I think she's making it up. They do this. We are always doing this every week. Oh, Trump never called her about Brigitte Macron. She's making that up for attention. Oh, she's lying. Charlie Kirk never changed his mind about Israel. She's making that up for attention. This is what we do every week, right? We're hamsters on a wheel. And so we're back to that again, right? People saying that I made it up. But what did the French couple do? That's what matters. It's now been a full week since I made that announcement. And here is the official response issued by the Élysée Palace. Nothing. Nothing. I want you to bear in mind that this was front page global news.
Right. So that's the defense. Yeah. It's shifted, though. It's because originally she said that there was going to be evidence presented by the president of the United States and his administration. And there's been absolutely none. I don't doubt that she probably contacted somebody in the Trump administration. That part probably happened. I don't know if she got a response. I don't know if she emailed or called them.
From the United States to Russia. And I
Candace Owens says Macron's ordered her assassination but provides no evidence. Put that one in there.
publicly challenged.
But these are like, she's currently in a legal battle with the French president over allegations that his wife was born a man. Put that in there too. It made world news.
Publicly challenged the Candace is making everything up crowd to prove it. Press the White House for a response, right? The White House is, the ball's very firm.
You said they would provide one. They didn't. I don't think they're taking this as seriously as you are. And also, you said that the burden of proof is now going to be upon them to release it. That's not how this works. The burden of proof is on you to provide any evidence that any of this is true, not just say it out loud. I believe that I am now the target of an assassination plot where the French government is trying to have me killed. Okay. And based on feelings, vibes, yeah. I believe that same government assassinated Charlie Kirk. Okay. Again, feelings, vibes, but yep.
In their court. And a week later, this is the official White House response. So what are we to make of that, you guys? Did I report it to the White House? Of course I reported it to the White House. Did I report it to the FBI?
You know what's interesting? Live chat replay is not available for this video. Interesting. That's new. Never used to happen. I wonder why. I wonder if the totality of all the people in the chat weren't buying this new angle. Maybe nothing.
Of course I reported it to the FBI. Did I report it to our counterterrorism unit? Of course I reported it because I'm telling you there's a paper trail. Common sense. You think I'm just doing that because I'm assuming you could get a felony for making something up out of thin air like that. You can't just use United States resources to go after somebody in a plot that never existed that you did for clicks on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So what's the issue here? Why is no one coming out and telling you that that's completely baseless, especially the Charlie Kirk assassination? The whole world is invested in that assassination. Wouldn't you want to shut that down? The idea that it was a multinationally planned event? And by the way, is that on its face even?
So I guess the new like right-wing strategy, if more people emulate this model, if it turns out to be profitable anyways, if he isn't like sued into oblivion over it, is basically to make up the most batshit things you can, and then it's on other people to disprove them. That becomes their burden, especially world governments. Like you can say whatever you want, you know, the most outrageous possible conspiracy theories. And then if those world governments do not respond directly to a podcast YouTuber, then that means that they are in fact real and those governments are covering it up.
Plausible. Multiple agencies and multiple countries involved from Egypt to Israel. People are saying that's totally crazy. No, it's the lone shooter who had never been on campus, who climbed the roofs like Spider-Man, happened to know where Charlie would be sitting and hit that shot in 4 seconds. Is it plausible that that's not the truth? Of course it's plausible. Anyone who knows anything about the French government probably knows that they have an appetite for cruelty and sexual deviancy. Anybody who has made it through the first couple of episodes.
All right, she's kind of cooking right now. This is good. It's true. I will accept all of the French slander that comes from this.
So Becoming Brigitte knows that the French government has an appetite for cruelty and sexual deviancy. Okay? LOL.
She's got your number, French
romance,
people.
Really? Romance with who? Exactly. That's one of the broader points of the Becoming Brigitte series. And so I'd like to thank Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, for being one of the first people to stick out his neck immediately and to assert what the entire world already knows about France. Here's what he said. He said, after reviewing everything Charlie Kirk has ever said about Macron's France, I find Candace's information about French involvement in his death entirely plausible. Charlie even called for 300% tariffs on France until the charges against me were dropped.
Has to be true.
I also would like to shout out Freddie Ponton, who wrote this article reminding people, and when I say reminding, I mean teaching people, if you're me, because I didn't know this, that exactly this satellite of countries, France, Israel, the French Legion, the United States, Egypt were quite literally involved in exactly this sort of operation, which further reaching global implications, involving the Safari Club in Egypt. Now, if you haven't heard of that, this was the article that he wrote, passed as prologue, Safari Club illuminates Candace Owens' allegations. I had never heard of this. I really hadn't, okay? Because I feel like I'm Alice in Wonderland a few years ago.
Well, again, like, you know, for any conspiracy theorist, by the way, pushing this kind of stuff, you need to base it on things that have crumbs of truth, right? So this whole thing doesn't work unless you start being like, it does seem a little bit difficult for one human being to make a shot like he did. And I don't think it's impossible, but it does seem as if that gives you enough room to start planting your own seeds of doubt, right? Like, could one person actually be able to pull off a 200-yard shot using that particular firearm and weapon, then be able to disassemble the gun with all the adrenaline running through their body, put it into a backpack, wrap it up in time, get it inside the backpack, then run on to the other side of the top area where they went down a ladder that they'd already had planned to be there, then safely make it all the way home in amongst all the chaos that was going on, the eyes of the world were watching, this made entire time stop kind of shit, and then get home with enough time to be able to tell your father that you need to talk about something, you feel the guilt is racking within you, and then you have to go to the priest, the Mormon priest, and you tell the Mormon priest, hey, by the way, I actually committed the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the Mormon priest is like, I'm going to now call the deputy sheriff because I'm going to have to report this, I'm sorry, but we're not, you know, basically going to try and protect you here, and then obviously the shooter got caught. But there's a lot of things in that entire timeline and story. Yeah, sure. There's parts that seem very difficult for me to believe in terms of like, that just seems like a huge challenge, but that does make more sense so far than anything that you've presented, right? Like, there's nothing that Candace Owens has offered in amongst all of those potential holes and conspiracies and all that make me go, right, so France did it, or Israel did it, or the US did it. I don't understand. Maybe it's the egos, right? Because I don't think you all are that like important. There's much bigger figures that they would probably go after in terms of you know, executing mass assassination, public assassinations nonetheless, right, that are obviously going to have the eyes of the world scrutinizing it in order to further their own political goals, that make more sense than just say random YouTuber who was very pro-Israel and very Zionist. I mean, that's the part of it where it's just like, but Charlie Kirk loved Israel, at least publicly. Even if you say privately he was very racist towards Jewish people, that doesn't surprise me at all, because it seems like a lot of Christian nationalists are actually very anti-Semitic, and they care more about having all Jewish people be in a particular part of the world for the second coming of Christ. That seems to be, you know, a real thing that happens actually a lot. So that actually tracks. It doesn't make me believe more in the conspiracies.
So I kind of believed everything the government said. I thought there were good guys. And after the Charlie Kirk assassination, I'm going, oh, wait, no, nobody is a good guy. These are like gangs that are running the world, obviously. Gangs that have gone mainstream, and democracy and the idea of a republic is just an illusion. Well, anyways, in that article, I'm only going to read a paragraph from it, but he said, when Candace Owens claimed on X that a high-ranking French government insider warned her of an imminent plot to have her assassinated, alleging that President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte had authorized and financed the operation, assigning it to a small national gendarmerie intervention group team that included an Israeli operative, she also suggested that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Legion with multi-state involvement. The claim sounded like it belonged to the realm of conspiracy thrillers, and yet, as the allegation ricocheted across social media, something unusual happened. People did not instinctively laugh it off. Some dismissed it, yes, but many hesitated, paused, or quietly admitted that given the right circumstances.
Well, anyways, when her next show comes out, it's going to apparently be a bombshell. Because she just tweeted this a couple hours ago. I received information last night that put the final pieces together for me. I now can say with full confidence that I believe Charlie Kirk was betrayed by the leadership of Turning Point USA and some of the very people who eulogized him on stage. Yes, I will be naming names and providing evidence for my claims, and I'm making a personal plea to every well-meaning person who donated to this godforsaken organization to request a refund. You were lied to, and the leadership knew. It goes live in 9 minutes. Oh God, I'm kind of excited for that. Maybe I'll check it out when it goes live. I'm curious who she's actually going to name names of. I don't know if today's the day. Maybe today's the day that she will officially name Erica Kirk as one of the collaborators, and that would be again a point of no return. a permanent fracture for different corners of the internet. There is no forgiveness ever at any point. Doesn't matter how big the tent needs to be. Doesn't matter at any point if it's just like we need to all work together to be able to take down the libs. You don't get back from accusing a grieving widow of being potentially involved or knowingly involved in the assassination of her own husband. That's just, yeah, it's... Even for these deplorable pedophile fascist cultists, I believe that's going to be a point of no return for them. They will not be able to tolerate that. Or you have to go all in, right? It's one or the other. It's extremes. You either have to be a part of, all right, we are through the looking glass here. We are now at the point where we can actually say out loud that maybe Eric Kirk was somehow involved. All stuff, by the way, that had people getting fired for so much less. I want to add that. I think there's been like over 800 firings in North America, because there was Canadian ones as well, for people who had the audacity to say things like Charlie Kirk was divisive, Charlie Kirk was a racist, Charlie Kirk was a bigot, Charlie Kirk should not be honored like a saint, things like that. About 800 people got fired from their jobs, kicked out of their schools. There was mass firings, cancel culture of the highest degree. This was the biggest cancel culture event you could imagine. It was the right all along, right? So at this point, she's now getting away with saying and insinuating things that, no liberal or leftist would have been saying. They would have been like, wait, what? I'm not going after the widow. I'm just going to say that he was a Nazi and I hated him, or I'm gonna tweet some jokes about that. But Jesus Christ, what? No, what are we doing here? Going after the widow just seems in poor taste, At least 600 Americans lost jobs for saying stuff about Charlie Kirk, including 50 academics and university administrators. By contrast, 22 academics were fired in 2020, 160 total fired for pro-Palestine views, making the Kirk crackdown the most extreme form of cancel culture in U.S. history. So, there you have it.
To our patrons for making this show possible. We could not fund it without you, and if you want to join, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus episodes, uncensored content, and all the good stuff. Thanks to Anna Loves Riley, Addercap, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hegbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Tigwick, and Words Greenwood.